Hello, little angels. My name is Minister Johnson, and this is the Black History presentation for On Time Ministry for Sunday School service. So we are in the Dr. Martin Luther King segment. We've done it with little angel, baby angels, guardian angels. Now we're doing it with you, little angels. And the scriptures that we're going to be talking about later on during service will be John 3:16 as well as Matthew 21 and 21. But I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone and mute my turn my camera off so you can watch the presentation, and I'll come back on and share some more insight of some of the quotes that you see in this broadcast.
Once upon a time, there's a man named Martin Luther King Jr. It's funny to think about because now we know his name so well, but at one time he was just a kid. Like maybe you're a kid watching this. Well, he was a kid too. Well, maybe you're a grown-up. That's okay too. Former kids are welcome here. I don't discriminate. Martin Luther King grew up to be a great man, of course, but things weren't all that great in the world while he was growing up. Not everybody was treated like they were somebody. And I believe that you should treat everybody like it's their birthday. But they didn't do that. People looked at the color of their skin. And that's how they decided if they were friends or not. Not cool, man. That didn't make him feel good. That didn't make anybody feel good. But his parents helped him grow up. He went to church. He learned about love. He grew up to be a minister to help a lot of people. He did all sorts of cool stuff. He helped a lot of people learn about love too. But still, he looked around and said, things should be better. He wanted to change things, so he did stuff. He decided, instead of spreading the hate, he would spread the love. He wanted to bring people together. Where people were hurting, he stepped in to help. He marched with them. He walked with them. He walked arm in arm with everyone. Sometimes it didn't go well, but he kept going. Sometimes he ended up in prison, but he kept going. Some people didn't like him, but he kept going. Some days were hard, but he kept going. Love does that. It just keeps going, even when things are dark. And, well, I don't like this part of the story, but things did get pretty dark. Someone who didn't agree with him shot him. He died in April 1968. Now, keep pressing it. Why are you telling us this sad story? Come on. I know. I'm sorry, but it happened. I don't like that happened. Now, I gotta tell you something. When things aren't awesome, it can be tough. And things won't always be awesome, but your response can be. Martin Luther King's response? It was awesome. Today, I just wanted us to think about this. Isn't it cool that we can change things? Like any of us, anybody. He dreamed and he changed things. And he dreamed and he kept sharing his dreams. They became not just his dream, a lot of people's dream. Like this one. I have a dream that little black boys and black girls will join hands with white boys and white girls and become sister and brothers. That's a pretty good dream. Let's dream like that. That could change things. I had the honor of meeting Dr. King's son, Dr. Martin Luther King III. And you can find our conversation in my new book, The President's Guide to Being Awesome. He's a really great leader, and he even wrote a book called My Daddy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's so good that I want to book it forward. I'm pledging to send 30 copies to a school in my town. What about you? How can you book it forward? Here's a few ways that people are doing it already. Look at this. It's amazing. It's really cool to see it spread. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being awesome, people. See you next week.
Welcome to Storytime with Miss Melange. The title of our book is I Am Martin Luther King Jr. The author is Brad Meltzer, illustrated by Christopher Eliopoulos. I am Martin Luther King Jr. When I was little, I used to get into a lot of accidents. One day, my little brother hit me in the head with a baseball bat. 2 other times, I mistakenly got knocked over by a car. Another day, I tumbled over our banister, then bounced through an open door into the basement. No matter how many times I fell, I kept getting back up. Even before I could read, I knew I liked books. My dad always talked about how I kept a lot of books around me. I used to tell my parents, when I grow up, I'm going to get me some big words. There is a power in words. Big words were in my future. When I was 6 years old, one of my best friends was a boy whose father owned a store across the street. My friend was white. I was black. It didn't matter to us. We would play games and have fun together. But when we started going to school, everything changed. He went to school where all the kids were white. I went to school where all the kids were black. Soon after, he told me, I can't play with you anymore. Why? My dad said so. He doesn't want us being friends. But why? You're one of my best friends, aren't you? Aren't you? I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. At dinner, my parents explained, it's because you're black and he's white. I was so mad that day. How could someone treat me differently just because of the color of my skin? I wanted to hate my friend and his father, but my parents told me to do the opposite, that I should love my friend even though he hurt me. They taught me that it's better to have more love in your life than more hate. Then my mother taught me one of the most important lessons of all. She said, you are as good as anyone. You must never feel that you are less than anyone else. I wanted to believe it, but every day I saw the opposite. I saw you could be treated unfairly just because of the color of your skin. If you were white, you went to a good school with great playgrounds and plenty of books. If you were black, your school was small, sometimes with no desks or even windows. It wasn't just the schools. Black people had to use different water fountains, different elevators, even different bathrooms. In fact, on a hot day when everyone wanted ice cream, if you were white, you can sit at the counter and eat from a nice dish. But since I was black, if they served me at all, it was through a side window and they put my ice cream in a flimsy paper cup. It got even worse when I was 14. I had just won a speech competition. My speech was about being fair to all people. I was so excited. Then on the bus ride home, a few white people got on board. At first, I stayed put. It didn't seem fair, but my teacher convinced me to move. We spent the rest of the ride standing and getting tossed in every direction. It was the angriest I have ever been. Every day, that is what life was like. Black people were treated terribly. The only question was, what could I do about it? At the age of 15, I started college. By 19, I became a minister and entered seminary school to study religion. In no time at all, I got my chance. In Alabama, a black woman named Rosa Parks was told to give up her bus seat to a white man. It was just like what happened to me. But unlike me, Miss Parks refused. She was arrested. Early the next morning, I got a phone call from a local community leader. Instead of using violence to protest the unfair rules, Black people would use a peaceful method. We would not ride the public buses. Without our money, the bus companies would go out of business. Now the only question was, would it work? On the first day of the protest, my wife called me to the window. The buses are all empty. It's working. We had to keep it going. As the head of the bus boycott, I gave one of the most important speeches of my life. The room was packed. Camera crews were filming. I had only 20 minutes to prepare. I didn't use notes, but by speaking from my heart, I found out how big words can be. The police put me in jail saying I was breaking the law. Other folks bombed my house, but instead of using my fists, I kept my calm. For more than a full year, every Black person in the city, and some white people too, refused to ride the buses. That meant some people had to walk for miles, but they kept going. There was a power in standing together. Eventually, our peaceful protest worked. The rules were changed. Public buses could no longer separate people based on the color of their skin. That was only the beginning. Soon, our peaceful protests sparked other peaceful protests. At lunch counters, college students organized sit-ins where they would not stop until everyone could eat together. Our methods of nonviolence were so powerful, I was invited to meet with the president at the White House. But sometimes the hardest problems were right at home. Seeing my daughter cry was one of the most painful moments of my life. It only made me work harder for change. Was it easy? Absolutely not. During one protest in Birmingham, Alabama, the police again arrested me and locked me in a dark jail cell that had only one window. Someone slipped me a newspaper in which white religious leaders had written an article calling us lawbreakers. Someone then snuck me a pen. In that jail cell, I wrote my own response in the margins of the newspaper and even on toilet paper. My letter from Birmingham jail was soon published as a pamphlet. Then it was in magazines and newspapers. Today, it has been read by millions of people. Like I said, it is amazing how big words can be. Our message was so important, even kids your age joined us. In Birmingham, during the Children's Crusade, more than 1,000 kids, some as young as 6 years old, showed up to march. The first day, the police arrested 900 of them. The next day, 2,500 children showed up, ready to go to jail. This was our finest hour. Enraged that we were not giving up, the chief of police told the firemen to spray the children with water hoses and attack them with dogs. They thought it would stop us, but instead, as the whole country watched on TV what they were doing to our children, it was a wake-up call for the nation's conscience. 90 days later, the rules began to change. Now blacks and whites in Birmingham were using the same lunch counters, water fountains, and restrooms. You can feel it in the air. More change was coming. Freedom was contagious. By the summer of 1963, an estimated of 1 million Americans held their own protests in cities across the country. A man named A. Philip Randolph suggested a massive march. People came from almost every state. They came in nearly every form of transportation. They even took off work and did not get paid just to be there. Old people, young people, black people, white people, even children like you. They all came to Washington, D.C., gathering in a righteous army. Why? Because they wanted a change, and they knew the surest way to change the world is to stand together. On August 28, 1963, I stood at the podium and spoke what some later called my biggest words of all. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that one day little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. Let freedom ring from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. After the March on Washington, the president and Congress passed new laws for civil rights, but that didn't mean our work was done. Indeed, our greatest battle was still to come. It began with 600 activists as they tried to walk 54 miles from Selma, Alabama, to the state capital of Montgomery. Back then, there were rules that stopped Black people from voting. If you wanted to change the laws, you have to be able to vote for new people who make the laws. The police had billy clubs and tear gas. They attacked our group and knocked many people down. But as I learned so long ago, you have to get back up. No matter how hard they hit us, we remained peaceful. Still, we didn't get through. 2 days later, we tried again. Now there were 2,500 of us. Once again, we tried. Once again, we did not get through. Did we give up? What do you think? It was Sunday, March 21st, 1965, our third try. Now we had 8,000 people with us. For 2 days, we marched. Rain could not stop us. The world was watching. The White House was too. President Johnson even sent troops to protect us. Exhaustion could not stop us. As we reached Montgomery, Alabama, tears were shed. But this time, there were tears of joy. In my life, people try to tell me I wasn't as good as they were just because of the color of my skin. When someone hurts you like that, it can be tempting to hurt them back. You must refuse. When someone shows you hate, show them love. When someone shows you violence, show them kindness. To reach our goals, we must walk the path of peace. We must lock arms with our brothers and sisters. We must march together. When we do, our voices will be heard and freedom will ring. I am Martin Luther King Jr. I stand for peace. I stand for justice. I stand to help others. I stand as proof that no matter how hard the struggle, we must fight for what is right and work to change what is wrong. Whatever struggle you face, no matter how hard it gets, you must always move forward. I am proof of this. If we rise up, if we stand together, if we remain united, nothing can stop our dream. And that's the end of I Am Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King saw a great need and he worked hard to produce change. Here's my question. Is there anything unfair that you see in your community? And if so, what are you willing to do to address it? Go ahead and place your answer in the comment section below. Make sure to hit thumbs up, to like, and subscribe so you can be notified of new stories.
A Picture Book of Martin Luther King Jr. A Picture Book of Martin Luther King Jr. by David A. Adler, illustrated by Robert Casilla. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of America's great leaders. He was a powerful speaker, and he spoke out against laws which kept Black people out of many schools and jobs. He led protests and marches demanding fair laws for all people. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. Martin's father was a pastor. His mother had been a teacher. Martin had an older sister, Willie Christine, and a younger brother, Alfred Daniel. Young Martin liked to play baseball, football, and basketball. He liked to ride his bicycle and to sing. He often sang in his father's church. Young Martin played in his backyard with his friends. One day he was told that two of his friends could no longer play with him because they were white and he was black. Martin cried. He didn't understand why the color of his skin should matter to anyone. Martin's mother told him that many years ago Black people were brought in chains to America and sold as slaves. She told him that long before Martin was born, the slaves had been set free. However, there were still people who did not treat Black people fairly. In Atlanta, where Martin lived, and elsewhere in the United States, there were white-only signs. Black people were not allowed in some parks, pools, hotels, restaurants, and even schools. Blacks were kept out of many jobs. Martin learned to read at home before he was old enough to start school. All through his childhood, he read books about Black leaders. Martin was a good student. He finished high school 2 years early and was just 15 when he entered Morehouse College in Atlanta. At college, Martin decided to become a minister. After Martin was graduated from Morehouse, he studied for a doctorate at Boston University. While he was there, he met Coretta Scott. She was studying music. They fell in love and married. In 1954, Martin Luther King Jr. began his first job as a pastor in Montgomery, Alabama. The next year, Rosa Parks, a Black woman, was arrested in Montgomery for sitting in the white-only section of a bus. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led a protest. Blacks throughout the city refused to ride the buses. Dr. King said, "There comes a time when people get tired of being kicked about." One night, while Dr. King was at a meeting, someone threw a bomb into his house. Martin's followers were angry. They wanted to fight. Martin told them to go home peacefully. "We must love our white brothers," he said. "We must meet hate with love." The bus protest lasted almost a year. When it ended, there were no more white-only sections on buses. Dr. King decided to move back to Atlanta in 1960. There, he continued to lead peaceful protests against white-only waiting rooms, lunch counters, and restrooms. He led many marches for freedom. In 1963, Dr. King led the biggest march of all, the March on Washington. More than 200,000 black and white people followed him. "I have a dream," he said in his speech. "I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." The next year, in 1964, Dr. King was awarded one of the greatest honors any man can win, the Nobel Peace Prize. The country was changing. New laws were passed. Blacks could go to the same schools as whites. They could go to the same stores, restaurants, and hotels. White-only signs were against the law. Dr. King told his followers to protest peacefully, but there were some riots and some violence. Then, in April 1968, Dr. King went to Memphis, Tennessee. He planned to march so black and white garbage workers would get the same pay for the same work. On April 4th in Memphis, Dr. King stood outside his motel room. Another man, James Earl Ray, was hiding nearby. He pointed a rifle at Dr. King. He fired the gun. An hour later, Dr. King was dead. Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed of a world free of hate, prejudice, and violence. Carved on the stone which marks his grave are the words, "I'm free at last." The end.
All right, little angels. I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. All right. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education by Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where there will not be judged by the color of the skin, but the content of the character. I shared that twice, everybody. Thank you. So, what I want to talk to you about, little angels, is what you looked at on this presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn my camera back on so you can see me. So, we watched today in this Black History webinar of Dr. Martin Luther King, the 2 books that were shared today. And what I tell you, it talks about love, it talks about integrity, it talks about character, it talks about taking risks, it's talking about continue to go despite the outcome of everything. So the scriptures that I have for you all here is John 3:16. For this is how God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son so that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. All right. So John 3:16 is what we are talking about in today's topic for little angels. Matthew 21 and 21 says, Then Jesus told them, I tell you the truth, if you have faith and do not doubt, you can do things like this and much more. You can even say to this mountain, may you be lifted up and thrown into the sea, and it will happen. So, little angels, I want you to take John 3:16 and Matthew chapter 21 and 21. And I'm reading both of those in the New Living Translation. And I want you to think about what these two scriptures mean in your own words, okay? And this is the assignment. Topic is faith. Okay, we're talking about faith. Where's your faith at and how you're believing in things to happen? And Martin Luther King believed in change. He was a man of faith. He was walking in integrity, character, love, understanding, racial equality, all those things that he was playing a part in. And he was a minister. And he went to school for these different tools that he applied to his life and to share with the world of what he wanted to see. And a lot of things took place and changed when he was here on earth. Thank you, Spirit. I want you to understand, little angels, why this is so powerful and so meaningful for you to take initiative in your own life. The power that you carry, the purpose that you have, the movement that you bring will give you a whole different perspective. So reread these scriptures, John 3:16 and Matthew 21 and 21, and rewatch this broadcast to really think about characters, the integrity, the love, the faith that you have within yourself. And have you practiced that with some of the things you're dealing with in your own life? And how does that impact people around you? Have you been an impact in the community? Have you made impact in school or in sports, wherever you may be at? Think about that, little angels, and apply that to your life. So I love you all. God bless you. Have an amazing and a blessed week. And I'm going to go ahead and pray. Father God, thank you for this moment, this time, this hour, and this second, Father God. You're an awesome God. You're an amazing God. So worthy to be praised, Father God. As we close and continue to move forward in faith, character, love, integrity, understanding. I pray blessings over every individual until we meet again. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. I will see you all next week. God bless you and have an amazing week.